We just finished the Mishnah on Daf Chav Zayin Amid Beis 27b, the second Mishnah. The Gemara is now going to begin with for a very short period, one of the more, you could say, nuanced, complicated topics throughout the entire Shas, the topic of Ribbis. Ribbis being interest. Ribbis, when person A lends money to person B, lends him $100 for a month, and you have to pay me back $120. That's called ribbis, and it is prohibited to lend with interest. One Jew is not allowed to lend with ribbis with interest. Another Jew, only to a non-Jew, you're allowed to lend with ribbis with interest. Historically, Jewish people throughout in Europe were always money lenders because they were prohibited from doing any type of commerce or business that could be in competition with a non-Jew. And the non-Jews, the Christians, were not allowed to do money lending on interest because they would not lend with interest, and that's why it became a Jewish occupation, a Jewish trade, banking, money lending, and that was a tremendous cause of anti-Semitism. In Mesechta Megillah, there's a chapter called Ezehu Neshech, one of the most, you could say, difficult because of the chapters of Gemara. Our Mishnah, which we just learned, we spoke about a shul which is sold. And her mayor said that when you sell the shul, the very first lines of the Mishnah, you could sell it with the stipulation that I'm able to buy it back. If I'm able to get the means to buy the shul back, I could buy it back for the selling price, the price that it was sold for. So let's say I have a shul. We call it Beis Chaim Itkin, and the shul was sold. It's a communal shul, and it was sold to become a bowling alley for 20 years. 20 years later, they decide to buy back the shul and make it into a shul once again. So let's say it was sold for, $100,000, and now I'm buying it back for $100,000. And in the meantime, the bowling alley, you could say, which was in that place, got free rent for 20 years or 10 years. Let's say 10 years, right? They were able to use the place for 10 years, and they essentially had free rent. It's almost like returning an item in the store. If you buy a cell phone, use it for 2 weeks, return it, and you got free rental of a cell phone if you get your money back. So the fact that our mayor in the Mishnah says that if you sell a shul, there's a condition that you have to be able to buy it back. What's essentially happening over here is that the buyers, let's say the bowling alley, which bought the shul, is now getting their money back. So they almost, you could say, lent to the board members of the shul, they lent this amount of money. They're getting it back, but they got usage, 10 years free usage for a bowling alley. So that is ribbis, that is interest. So the Gemara asks, Rebbe Meir, and according to Rebbe Meir, who says that you could force a return of a shul, you could force a refund of the shul in case the shul in the future has a means to buy it back. How could the buyers, the purchasers, have lived in the shul? So if the shul, let's say, was sold to a bowling alley, let's say, how could the bowling alley have used the shul all that time? It's possible that the original sellers will buy their shul back, and then it will be interest. I brought up a short meme. When you finally locked all your loans in and the rates drop again. But the idea is that it could be ribbis, it could be interest. In this past week's parsha, I don't remember what aliyah was. The Parshas Bahar, we just read a pasuk, and it's here on the screen. Al tikach me'itoy neshech v'sarbis. If your brother becomes poor and his hand falters, you shall support him, whoever he is, ger v'soisha v'chayimach, whether he's a resident, whether he's a convert. V'chayimach, so they should be able to live with you. And when you lend him money, al tikach me'itoy neshech v'sarbis. Do not take interest. Tarbis is an increase of money. Let your brother live with you. Neshech means to bite. You're biting out from his income. You're paying mainly interest without actually paying the loan down. And you should fear Hashem. You shall not give your money with interest. And you should not give your food with an increase, meaning don't sell him that he has to pay back later with more money. And it's such a powerful mitzvah. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan, to be a God to you. Meaning this mitzvah is so powerful. The Rashi brings it in over here. Comes up. This mitzvah is so powerful that it says, Hashem says, in Egypt, I have distinguished between the firstborn Egyptian and a non-firstborn Egyptian during the plague of the firstborn. I am capable of discerning and exacting punishment from someone who lends money to his fellow Jew with interest and says, it's money that doesn't belong to me. It's money from a non-Jew. Or, I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of Egypt on condition to keep my commandments, even the commandment of not doing interest, not lending money on interest. Is it many explanations of the Rebbe? One of them is that interest, neshech, tarbis, it's lending money to someone and getting more than you earned. You did not do any effort or work to earn that money. And Hashem made the world that everything has to come through effort. And to receive things the way of matnas chinam as a gift is going against the grain of what Hashem wants, what Hashem desires. So if person A gives person B $200 to pay back, he cannot pay him back $210. The Chaim, the sages, added on many safeguards to the mitzvah of Ribbis, to the mitzvah of interest, not lending out on interest. And one of them is, you can't sort of try making a loophole and doing what's called mekach umemkar, a sale as Ribbis, sale as interest. And this example of Remeir would go right into this safeguard of the Chaim of the sages. I'm selling a property from Reuven to Shimon for 10 years, for however long it is, and he lends it, and then during those 10 years, during that time, Shimon can use a property, and then Reuven pays him back the money and gets back the original property. It's called Ribbis v'derech mekach umemkar. You're giving interest in a way of a sale as opposed to a way of a loan. Now, there's another thing called tzad echad b'ribbis. Tzad echad b'ribbis is a possibility of it being interest. Tzad echad means that it's not definite. When the money was lent, it's possible that the interest will be coming out of it, possible that not. For example, in this case over here, if the shul sold the property to the bowling alley, if the shul never buys the bowling alley back, so then the bowling alley made a proper purchase, and you never have any interest, any ribbis coming. Over here, it's called a tzad echad b'ribbis. You have a possibility of interest being charged, but not a definitive. It's not for sure that interest will be charged. It's a doubt. And the prohibition, the safeguard of the Chachamim, of the sages, to include a sale as a method of ribbis, of interest, which would go into the lav, the prohibition of the Torah, the Chachamim, the sages did not include only a doubtful situation where it's possible that will lead to ribbis. So Gemara asks, according to the mayor, how could the person who bought the property use that property? So let's say the bowling alley bought the shul. How could they use a property? However, later Ribbis, it's tantamount to taking interest. For they received free use of the property as long as it was in their possession. And now when they give the money, they give the property back and they receive the purchase funds for the shul, it becomes Ribbis, becomes interest. Gemara answers, Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Meir b'shitas Rabbi Yehuda Amara. The Amar tzadacha b'Ribbis mutar. This is Mesechta Megillah and Parakeh Zu Neshech. He brings the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that any type of lending, buying and lending, which the borrowing and lending, which is done in a way of a sale, not in a way of a loan, and that's condition number one. So it's sort of indirect interest. You're selling an object and you're going to pay it back, but in the meantime, you could have used the object. And number two, it's only a suffix, it's only a doubt if it's going to lead to Ribbis, to interest. Then you don't have an Isser Ribbis, a prohibition of lending of interest, because it's not a definite that this sale is going to lead you to buying and selling on interest. And therefore, the buyers or purchasers would be allowed to have benefit from this sale. So let's say the shul was sold to the bowling alley. 10 years later, the shul gathered enough funds to buy their shul back. They could buy it back, and the bowling alley had used it, and they don't have to pay anything, according to Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehuda, because it was never prohibited, because what Sad Echad B'Ribbis was only a possibility to be lending on interest. Itanya, as we learned, he brings a proof for a brisa. Harei shehaya noshe b'chaveri maneh. If somebody lent money to their fellow, so let's say Ruvain lent 100 zuz to Shimon. Zuz is the currency from back then. Now Ruvain is demanding his money back on Shimon. So now Mr. Shimon, he made his field that he owns. So the borrower made his field as a sale, and he wrote like this: I am borrowing from you $100, 100 zuz, and if I don't pay you back, I'm going to pay you back until this and this date, until Lag BaOmer. And if I don't pay you back till this date, take my field instead of the money I owe you. So what's the halacha? Bizman shamaycher echal peiros mutter. So until that time, the seller, meaning the borrower, the one who owns the field, have complete benefit from the field because it's his field. And he's considered to be the seller. He's a borrower, but he's selling his field in case he doesn't pay. And there's no interest. However, the buyer, which is a lender, is prohibited from having any benefit from that field until that time, because perhaps the borrower, which is in this case a borrower, we're calling him the seller, which is a borrower, he might pay back, and if the buyer, which is the one who gave the loan, if he would have any benefit from the field before the due date, then there might be interest. He might have eaten the fruits of the field and then get his money back. And so it comes out that besides for getting back the money of the principal that he lent, he's also going to be getting all the fruits that he ate. So therefore, it's prohibited until that due date for the seller, for the one who the lender, which is the buyer. It's prohibited for him to have any benefit from the field until that due date comes up. and the funds, and it was not paid back. That is a chacham, the sages. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu lekeach oichel peres mutter." It would even be permitted for the buyer, which is the one who lent the money, to even before the due date, to have benefit from the fruits, because he says this is called a tzad echad b'ribbis, only a possibility for interest, for there to be interest later on, because perhaps the borrower will not pay back the principal on time, and then it could end up being his field. So since Rabbi Yehuda says, since it's in a way of a buying and selling, in a way of a transaction, not in a way of a loan, and it's only a possibility of ribbis of interest, so he says there's a possibility of interest, you don't consider it to be interest. We'll continue this Gemara. Later on, this rest of his daf, after this sugya, becomes a very unique agadata. Agadata is like a more, sort of like the Gemara we had in the first parak, all about the Megillah, a little bit more lighter Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Maise bebaisus ben Zunin. There's a story of Baitus ben Zunin. Baitus ben Zunin, he is somebody who is brought down. He makes appearances in Shas from time to time. He's always a good guy, the good man. He was a wealthy person, and he gave a tremendous amount of tzedakah. He always honored the Talmidei Chachamim. He was a kohen. He was a student, a big Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar. He was in the generation of Reb Gamliel of Yavne. He lived in the city of Lud, and based on his actions, on the way he acted, we learn different halachas from what he did. For example, when it comes to taking a bath on Shabbos, it says that Baisus ben Zunin would fill up a pitcher of cold water on erev Shabbos, and he would pour it on one limb at a time on Shabbos. And we learned that you're allowed to do that on Shabbos from him. There's a story of Baitus ben Zunin, which is brought down that he took all the books of Nevi'im and Ksuvim, and he made it into one large scroll. From there, we learn you're allowed to do it. And we learn many different times, many different halachas from Baisus ben Zunin. In Mesechta Avodah Zarah, in Mesechta Psachim, about making different types of matzah in different shapes that might become chametz. His father was the treasurer of Rebbe Gamliel in Yavne, and his son Baisus was called Baisus ben Zunin, and he was a time of Yehuda Hanasi, and he was Rebbe Gamliel. He was, and so he was. So we have many different halachas that we learn from Baisus ben Zunin, and one of the halachas we learn is about tzad echad b'ribbis. So says the Gemara, there's a story of Baisus ben Zunin, who was a big tzaddik, and the Chachamim used to learn based on his actions. Sha'asa sadeyu mecher al pi Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah v'lekech echel peiros haya. Baisus ben Zunin one time made such a transaction that he borrowed money from someone, and he put his field as collateral, and says, if I don't pay back by a certain time, let's say by Lag BaOmer, you'll be able to keep my field. And he did it all with rabbinical oversight. He went to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah from the Haggadah, and he did it, and just to follow according to the Ritva, to make the Gemara flow smoother, he did it according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and the lekeach, the buyer of the property, which is the one who lent him money during the entire time of the loan, he was the lender, which is the buyer of the field. If he doesn't pay back, was eating or having benefit from the fruits of the field, selling it, eating it. And since this was done according to the guidance of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, so from there we see that you are allowed to do ribbis, tzadach b'ribbis, to do interest, which is only a possibility of interest, not a definite, in a way of a buying and selling, in a way of a purchase and a sale, as opposed to the way of a loan. And since we're 2 steps removed from a ribbis d'oraisa, the ribbis from the biblical interest, which is forbidden, we're doing in a way of a purchase and a sale, and we're doing it only in a way of a possibility. Therefore, he says it's permitted. Amar Lai, the sages pushed off this proof of Rabbi Yehuda, and he told him, Misham Raya, do you have a proof from there? As Ritva says, he didn't have a first-hand knowledge of the story. Rabbi Yehuda only heard of the story. He could say, don't believe everything you hear in the news. Rabbi Yehuda only heard of the story that Baisas ben Zunin making an arrangement, such a similar arrangement, according to the direction of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. However, he got one detail wrong. Actually, it was not according to the way that you understood it. Rather, it was a seller, meaning the borrower who kept his field and was eating and benefiting from his field. And Baisas ben Zunin was borrowing the money. He kept the field until the due date. Is it an argument how exactly the story happened? So that's why the Ritva says it's a little bit. It was that Rabbi Yehuda didn't have a clear story. He didn't have and the Chacham and the sages told him exactly what happened. And just from the story, just from the terminology of the Chacham, of the sages, they didn't bring a proof from there to their opinion that tzadach b'ribbis aser, that a possibility of interest is forbidden. But they said that since Baisas ben Zunin was eating the fruits of his own field till the due date, from there is no proof to Rabbi Yehuda. But it's not a proof. They say one not to Rabbi Yehuda, not to them, not one way or the other. My benayu. What is the practical difference between these two opinions of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim and the sages, which would in turn, Idovi, Shalom Aleichem.
Hello, hi.
Welcome. So what is the practical difference between them? What are they arguing about? They're arguing about Tzadachot b'ribbis Ika benayu. Are you allowed to have uncertain interests? Are you allowed to make a sale if there's a possibility that it could be interest coming out of there? Mar Sav Rabbi Yehuda holds tzadach b'ribbis mutar. It is permitted to make a sale if there will be uncertain interest coming out of there. That if the sale never goes back, there's never a refund. So you say that everything was fine. The buyer bought whatever they bought. The only possibility of interest is if the seller decides to get a refund. And then they were able to have use of the property of the item for free during that time of the loan. But since it's only a possibility, Rabbi Yehuda says it's mutar. Mar Savar, and the other opinion, which is the sages, Savar holds, tzadachar b'ribbis aser. It is prohibited to put oneself in a situation where there is a possibility of interest, even if it's not certain. And so therefore, the Meir in our Mishnah, which said that you could sell a shul and the sellers of the shul could always get their money, if they pay their money back, they could always get the shul back. Like we brought the story, like for example, say if you sold it for a bowling alley, you could always buy it back from the bowling alley. But since it is only a possibility, it's uncertain. Therefore, he says it is mutter, it is permitted. Once we're on the topic of tzadach b'ribbis, the next 3 lines in the Gemara, Rava says, he gives a different explanation if why tzadechad b'ribbis, only a possibility of interest is permitted or prohibited. To Kuliyam, he says Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim both hold tzadechad b'ribbis asur. It is forbidden to even put yourself into a situation, even if it's a sale, to have a possibility of buying and selling, if it could lead you to interest. Here, the Chachamim, the sages, and Rabbi Yehuda are arguing about a different topic. Are you allowed to lend on interest if the buyer and the seller both agree that the buyer will pay back any interest? Meaning, in the case that we have somebody owns a field. He borrows money from someone else. So let's say Baitus Ben Zunin owned the field. He borrowed money from someone else. And he put his field saying, if I don't pay back by this date, you get the field. And until that time, if the borrower, the borrower tells the lender that the lender could eat all the fruits and all the benefit from the field. However, if I pay you back on time, pay me back everything you had benefit from the field. For example, so let's go back to, let's say someone, a shul was sold to the bowling alley, and after 10 years, the shul buys it back. And so they say that, okay, we sold it for $1 million. We'll pay you back $1 million, but for every year you used it, pay you back $20,000. So we're only going to buy it back from you for $900,000. And every year, or $800,000. And every year the bowling alley will pay us $20,000. So we're going to pay you back $1 million minus $20,000 per year. Rava Amar, so is that allowed to be done? Can you make the sale, knowing there's a possibility of interest, with making an extra condition, sort of a safeguard, that will pay you back, if you pay back the loan on time, any benefit we receive from your field or from the shul or from whatever it is, it will be paid back in full. Mar Savar, Rabbi Yehuda holds, Ribbis amnas l'hachzir muter. You're allowed to charge interest in such a manner where it's not a loan, it's a sale, and it's not definitive. And with the condition that if the interest is taken, if the loan is paid back in time, or if the money is paid back in time, so then you're going to pay back, then we're going to pay you for any benefit we had. So it will never be interest. It's a possibility of interest that you'll pay back. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's allowed. Umar Savar Aser. And the sages, the first opinion holds that even in such a way, it is prohibited. That you're not allowed to, you have to stay so far away from Ribbis, from any type of interest, that even if you're going to pay back the interest later on, you still have to stay away from it, because at the time of the usage, it was interest. So therefore, to bring it back to our Mishnah, according to Rebbe, who says that you could return the shul could be refunded, and it will be only going according to Rava only if that the bowling alley, let's say, pays rent, meaning they pay the money for the amount of benefit that they use all of those years. So they made the agreement that if we buy the shul back, you're going to have to pay us rent for all those years that you use. And because of that, the mayor holds that there's no ribbis, that there's no interest. If it never made this agreement, then you can't sell the shul according to the mayor. What's the halacha about tzadach b'ribbis and a shul that was sold? So we learned the halacha previously. They cannot sell a shul for any of these things, not for a bathhouse, a tannery, a mikvah, a bathroom, or a laundry. You cannot, so a laundromat, you can't sell a shul for any of these things. If somebody, let's go back to the Gemara. Somebody sold his field to his friend and says, when I have money, I'm going to buy the field back from you. So then the buyer never really owned the field properly. Because a buyer always has a possibility, maybe the seller is going to get money and buy it back for me. So therefore, he cannot have any benefit from the field, and it's called Ribbis. It's called interest, and if the buyer has benefit from the field, then halachically you're able to even claim the money back from them in court. However, if the buyer took some of the funds and told him, I'm giving you some of the funds right now, and the rest I'm going to, and once I pay you the rest of the money, he adds on the word me achshav, I'm acquiring it from now. So there's sort of a conundrum. The buyer can't use it, can't have any benefit from the field, and the seller can't have any benefit from the field, because the seller might want to buy the field back, and then the buyer can't have any benefit from it, and the buyer can't have any benefit from it, and the seller can't have any benefit from it, because maybe he'll never pay it back, and may achshav retroactively it will be considered to be in the possession of the buyer. Therefore, we don't make such conditions. When we make a sale, we make it unequivocal, we make it complete. In such a situation, what's done is, in the case where nobody could benefit from the produce or the yield of the field, so then you get a third party, and they take the commission and they sell all the produce, and then at the end of they see who the field goes to. Whoever it belongs to, then you see who that benefit goes to. If a shul was sold, so as long as a shul does not have, if it was sold by an individual, not with the permission of all the leaders of the shul, so then they're able to demand it back later on, up to a certain amount of time, each place according to its situation. However, if it was sold it's called the Shivat Tuvir, all the leaders of the community or the owners of that shul, if it's a small shul, so then the sale is final and they can't demand it back, even if later on things change. This doesn't only applies to shuls, it applies to other things as well. If there's a place in a shul, for example, let's say 770, places for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are at a premium, seats. And someone passes away, and the kids say, the children say we want to keep that place. And the person sitting next to there says, I want to buy a second place next to me. So if they make a sale, is it final? Do they make a sale with a end date in mind? So the final halacha when it comes to all of these things is that it all depends on the minig hamakom, the custom of the place. What's prohibited is Ribbis daraisa from the Torah to have any type of interest being sold. Further than that, it depends on minig hamakom, the halachas of the place. And if you want to go to din Torah, the laws of the Torah, you have to sign in the beginning that this is what you're going to go according to din Torah. But in general, the Chaim, the sages, stay very, very far away from Ribbis. And any Ribbis, any type of interest which is done today in a Jewish-owned bank, you have to sign what's called a heter iska. It's not really a loophole, it's just that person A is giving money to person B to do business with that money, and you're taking me on as a partner, so any loss or gain is included. There's certain, complexities involved in heter iska, but there was a Jewish bank called Bank Leumi, and whenever they would give a mortgage to a Jewish family, they would always have to have them sign a heter iska, or if they would do it in Eretz Yisrael in Israel, have them sign a heter iska in order to get around all the ideas of interest. We all know the famous story of Yecheskel, the prophet Yecheskel, the valley of dry bones. He came to a big valley full of bones which were dried already. Either they were the Jews who left Egypt early from Ephraim, or they're Jews who were killed by Nebuchadnezzar. And Hashem told them to tell all these bones to come to life and to become and not to be dry, to become moist and to have limbs and to come to life. And everyone stood up and came back to life except for one person. Yecheskel asked Hashem, "Why is this one person not coming back to life?" And Hashem told him, because this person lent to others on interest. Lend Ribbis. So lending with interest is a very, it's a very serious thing. Halachas could be very complicated. Even saying good morning when you didn't say good morning to them before could be considered to be a tzad ribbis, a type of ribbis. Halachas of ribbis could become very nuanced. So for Monday, Tuesday, we'll learn some more halachas, laws of Shabbos, together with some other biurim explanations, halachas of the Alter Rebbe and others. And Wednesday, Thursday, Mir Hashem will continue with V'yadaita Moskva, the V'yadaita from the Rebbe Hershel. So halacha Ybeis, if you have Siman, Ayin Beis, chapter 72, halacha 12. Mitzvah kol adam lirchotz b'chol erev Shabbos panav yadav v'raglov. It's a mitzvah to wash your hands, your face, and feet on erev Shabbos, on Friday, b'chamin, with warm water, even if it's a difficult thing to do back then. V'yitbos atzmei b'mikvah, and to go to the mikvah on erev Shabbos. Going to the mikvah is in addition to the mikvah one goes in the morning. It's a special mitzvah to go to mikvah in order to have a tosfos kedusha, an extra kedusha, to prepare oneself for Shabbos. Many stories are brought in Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan would go to mikvah on erev Shabbos, come out, and he would have a look of a malach, a look of an angel. Best is to take a bath in hot water on erev Shabbos. It wasn't so simple, especially as the Rambam says, one should take a bath in hot water twice a month. It wasn't such a simple thing. You couldn't just turn on the tap and take a shower. So if it's possible, one should take a bath in hot water. It's forbidden to go to the mikvah or take a bath together with your father, father-in-law, your mother's husband, your sister's husband. Some places it is customary that they cover themselves in the mikvah. When they go to mikvah, it's permitted. A teacher should not go to mikvah in front of his student should not go to the mikvah together with his teacher out of respect. And if they're needed to assist them, it is permitted. We don't generally see in our circles people being very strict on this part, unless it's like a teacher, like a Rebbe or someone like that, which taught you most of your Torah. Halacha Yedalid. Mitzvah lacha fesarosh. It's a mitzvah to wash your hair, to cut your nails. We'll go a little bit into this topic. As well as if one has long hair, to cut their hair. And if people cut their nails every Friday, they're allowed to do it even on Chol Hamoed, even during Shiva. They're allowed to cut their nails if they do it in every erev Shabbos. You should not cut your toenails and fingernails on the same day. The Magen Avram writes that one should cut their toenails on Thursday and fingernails on Friday, but we're going to learn at the end of this halacha actually a different opinion. On Rosh Chodesh, we don't cut our hair, even if it's on Friday. The Alter Rebbe says that Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch only brings the custom not to cut your hair on Rosh Chodesh, but he doesn't mention anything about cutting your nails. So according to the Alter Rebbe, seemingly you would be allowed to cut your nails on Rosh Chodesh. Whenever it comes to a mitzvah, you're allowed to cut it on Chol Hamoed, Rosh Chodesh. For example, a woman who goes to mikvah and needs to cut her nails could do it in any day. You have a sheichet, and they have to cut their nails at a certain time because the nails have to be able to feel the chalif, the shkita knife. They could cut it on any day. There's no limitations on that. A moihel who needs to cut their nails at a certain time could do it. For a mitzvah, there's no prohibition. Now we're going to go into minhag, and these are all according to Kabbalah. Some people are particular not to cut their nails in a consecutive order. This is all according to Kabbalah, but rather to go in intervals. You start with your second finger. It's called the ring finger, I think. You start with your second finger next to your thumb, and then you go Siman Badaga. Siman is 2, 4, 1, 3, 5. First 2, then 4, then 1, then 3, then 5 on your right hand. With small maschil metzvah on your left hand, you start in the opposite direction, which is 4. It calls it Div Haga, Daled Beis Hey Gimel Aleph, 4, 2, 4, 4, 2, 1, 3, 5, 4, 2, 5, 4, 2, 5, 3, 1. Some people don't cut their nails on Thursday. They begin to grow on the third day after being cut, which is, if you cut it on Thursday, Thursday is the first day, second day is Friday, Shabbos is the third day. And some people don't cut their nails on Thursday. And although the Magen Avram said to cut it on Thursday, we don't do it. You should be careful to burn your nails. The Rebbe Hershel would always burn his nails, and he would mix in with them a splinter, a piece of wood, when he would burn them. Now, the Gemara says that when somebody cuts their nails, they shouldn't leave it around. Why? Because it says ruach ra'a ala tzipernayim. There is a bad spirit on nails. Now, most of us aren't really connected to this. I remember a Ruddle teaching us, and he said there was a woman who was about Shuvah, came to her house, and they're telling her, it came up in conversation, the nails, and she said she was in some type of group or a cult, or whatever you want to call it, in Switzerland, where everything was based around nails. They would take their nails and boil it. They would take their nails. So there is koiches atuma, powers of tuma inside. That's why we have to wash our hands. Interesting thing, there was one time there's my father, there was a student of Moshe Mendelssohn, the beginning of the Enlightenment, the Reform, and the student of his who went to yeshiva and was learning under him, and he says, I have too many doubts in what you're saying. I have too many, what you're saying, some things just don't sit well with me. So he says, what you should do is take your water from your negavasser in the morning, that you wash your hands, and drink that water. You won't have any more doubts. And when he said that, he says, okay, I'm staying away from him, staying away from this person. The idea of a tziparin, a fingernail, is fingernails, like anything else which has tremendous kedusha, tremendous holiness, could become, when utilized in an improper way, the exact opposite. So when Adam, the first man, was created, Hashem gave him a clothing. It says kosnes or. It says Hashem gave him sort of a nail type of covering over his entire body. And that's what he wore. He didn't have to wear clothes. They weren't embarrassed. There was no nakedness. But it was taken off of him, and it only was left just the fingernails part, instead of being over the entire body after the sin of eating of the tree of knowledge. So therefore, you have to be very careful about the rest of it, the rest of the fingernails. That's why it says if a woman is pregnant, she should be careful not to walk on nails and fingernails. And it says if someone's part of their body gets destroyed, it could be harmful for the rest of the body. So therefore, the Gemara says that a tzaddik, someone who's a righteous person, takes their nails and buries them in the ground. People shouldn't walk on it. But let's say somehow it could become one day, somehow uncovered, and people could walk in it and get harmed. So therefore, the best thing is sarfan, to burn it. It says sarfan chassid, someone who burns their nails as a chassid. Chassid is someone who goes beyond the letter of the law, even it could harm them. But if someone's strict to burn it, he's going beyond the letter of the law. Now, since these are all Kabbalistic or spiritual things, what exactly is the rules of it? Sometimes you can't argue or say any different than what you hear. But for example, if one is cutting their nails, you're supposed to gather them all together, not let them fly around. So they have many nail cutters that gather your nails. Definitely don't leave it laying around on the ground. And the best is to burn it or to flush it down the toilet. If they say a nail was moved somehow and it was laying around, said if it was moved, it doesn't have the power to harm in the same way if it was in its first place. So if somebody lost the nail, they should sweep the room, that in case if there's a nail there, they should move it around. There's no difference whether it's fingernails or whether it's toenails, that both of them still have the same ruach ra, the same type of spirit of impurity on it. On Rosh Chodesh, if one did start cutting their nails, they could continue, they don't have to stop. On Chol HaMoed, if someone, if the nails has to be cut, better to do it in a way of a shinoi, to cutting it with their hands. There's Rabbi Yehuda Chassid writes in his tzava'ah, in his will, which we do many of the things that he says, that one should not cut their nails at all on Rosh Chodesh. The exception would be only if it's for a mitzvah. He also writes that one should not cut their toenails and fingernails on the same day. And you see, it was brought in Shulchan Aruch. There's one of the Talmidim, one of the students of the Arizal, he writes that if one knows how to look, they could see different marks on people's hands and all over their body. And you could tell different things that happen. I guess as people read the palms of your hand, but I guess this is how it has a source in Kedusha. And he says, therefore, on your fingernails, you could one could see. The Arizal has a section called Parts of Aponim, how to look at someone's face and to tell many things from looking at it. It says Hashem made a person as a tzaddik, and every single part of the person is sort of like a microcosm of the person. And if you have the ability to be able to look at someone and tell things from looking at them, it says you shouldn't keep it to yourself. Don't open up a booth and become a palm reader. He says, therefore, and he describes the different parts of the body, from your ears, from your eyes. You could tell different parts, different ways, different things of the person. If the person is an angry person, is a nice person. And he says, on your hands, you could tell the same thing. And we should use every ability we have to a mitzvah and not for an avera. And every single limb of the body should also be used for a mitzvah as well. So when it comes to one's hands and fingernails, it says there's many things you could tell from there. But a fingernail it's called a klipa. Klipa is like a peel. the fingernails are the only part of the body with the hair and we learned these in obviously in the Gemara Mesechta, that it's called Sipernayim. It's the way Hashem created the world with his own fingernails, so to speak. You're able to cut it off and not feel any pain. Every other part of the body, besides the hair and the fingernails, one cuts it, one hurts it, they feel pain. Because every single part of the person has chayas, has life, except for the tzipernayim and the sadis. The hairs have a little bit of life, even in comparison to the hair. But in the way of sidus and tzipernayim, sidus is here is the way Hashem created the world. We said that's why a woman is such great kedusha in her hair, has to cover her hair. A nazir has tremendous kedusha, even greater than that, and therefore has to cut their hair off. You can't even have it at all. Because if you don't control it properly, it could be Yidnika Sachitzonim. You could have a klipa, could have a hold, could get some life from it. And therefore, that's why it's important when we cut our nails to make sure that they don't just lay around. And therefore, everything, we should make sure that it goes only into a way of Kedusha and not into a way of klipa. He brings out afterwards that also when it comes to one of the greatest gifts that we have in the world, one of the most popular things in the world when it comes to nigunim, song and music, you also have the same idea. It's such a powerful thing, you're able to use it for kedusha, holiness, or klipa, the opposite. The Samach Tzedek writes that you see that when it comes to books, almost all the writings are about, every song is all writing about love, because Ava is such a powerful thing. The reason why it's powerful because it's an Ava for Hashem, a love for Hashem. And if it's not used properly, then it could become used for the opposite. The same thing with fingernails is the same thing. It originally was such a great kedusha, and therefore we have to change. When we cut our nails and we're cutting it off from any chayas that it has, we have to make sure that it's put off in the proper way. So with that, we'll pause for